We spend a lot of time discussing the Optimum Performance Training Model, or OPT for short. That's because it's such an important tool for organizing a methodical, systematic, and progressive exercise plan. Now that we have a solid foundation about stability, it's time to move on to the next level, strength. As you're aware, the OPT model is divided into 3 distinct levels: stabilization, strength, and power. Once correct movement patterns and the stability of the kinetic chain are established, we can move to the strength level. The strength level is designed to maintain stability while increasing the amount of stress placed on the body for increased muscle size, strength, and work capacity. This period of training gives clients a chance to take things literally to the next level in terms of increasing caloric expenditure, muscle size and strength, and bone mineral density. In other words, it's time to pump things up. Okay, so the strength level consists of 3 phases. Phase 2, strength endurance training. Phase 3, muscular development training. And Phase 4, maximal strength training. Phase 2, strength endurance training, is a hybrid form of training that promotes stabilization and muscular endurance, hypertrophy, and strength. The unique thing about this phase is that it uses superset techniques. More on that in a minute. Phase 3, muscular development training, is specific for the adaptation of maximal muscle growth. Phase 4, maximal strength training, involves lifting heavy loads near or at maximal intensity to develop optimal levels of maximal strength. This is an optional phase for some clients, but for those who participate, it's shown to help increase the benefits of power training used in Phase 5. Now, the components for working through all this may look a little familiar, and that's because they're exactly the same as seen in Phase 1. These components include the warm-up, activation, skill development, resistance training, client's choice, and cool down. The difference will be that the acute training variables such as reps, sets, rest periods, and training loads will differ in each phase. So let's take a look at the details of each component as it applies to the strength level of the OPT model. First up is the warm-up. The first 2 techniques include self-myofascial techniques like foam rolling and active stretching. You can also include dynamic stretching, but it's optional. A quick 5 to 10 minute cardio warm-up is also optional after your client has finished stretching. The primary difference in this warm-up compared to Phase 1 is that static stretching has progressed to active stretching. Similar to Phase 1, the activation techniques for Phase 2 through 4 include core and balance exercises, but the exercises should ideally be more progressive. For example, core exercises should involve flexion, extension, and rotation of the trunk at slightly faster tempos. Example exercises could include crunches, knee-ups, cable rotations, and many more. Balance exercises in the strength level involve dynamic eccentric and concentric movements of the balanced leg through a full range of motion. In other words, the balanced legs now flexing and extending during the exercise rather than staying stationary. Sample balance exercises following this protocol include single leg squats, single leg Romanian deadlifts, step-ups to balance, and many more. During the skill development section, you can choose plyometric and SAQ exercises, or you can choose to provide instruction for alternative forms of exercise, like Olympic weightlifting or martial arts drills. It'll depend on your expertise and the goals of the client. In other words, you'll instruct your clients to run and jump faster and higher than similar exercises performed in Phase 1. Now, there is one pretty big difference at the strength level. Phase 2 through 4 have specific resistance training protocols designed to elicit certain physical adaptations. Phase 2 strength endurance training is a hybrid form of training and can be considered a bridge between stability-focused training from Phase 1 and muscular hypertrophy in Phase 3. It involves supersets, where the first exercise is a traditional strength-focused exercise, immediately followed by a stability-focused exercise for the same body part, like a bench press followed by push-ups. This protocol is used for all muscle groups. Choose between 1 and 2 supersets for each body part with a set range of 2 to 4 and 8 to 12 repetitions. Resistance training for phase 3, muscular development training, is specific to developing muscle mass, though it often aligns with common fitness goals like improving body composition. Choose between 3 to 6 sets and 6 to 12 repetitions per muscle group. However, higher rep ranges are allowed if the client wants to further work on muscular endurance adaptations. Now, resistance training for phase 4, maximal strength training, is explicitly meant for the adaptation of maximal strength. This is definitely an advanced form of training and is only recommended for experienced lifters and exercisers who've worked their way up the phases of the model. Choose between 4 to 6 sets with 1 to 5 repetitions using an explosive repetition tempo. Client's choice is identical to level 1 of the OPT model. Anything goes, as long as it's safe. Have your client pick 1 to 2 of their favorite exercises. Same with the cool down. It's the same in this level and actually in all 5 phases, and it should last between 5 to 10 minutes. As a reminder, the cool down should include optional cardio, self-myofascial techniques, and static stretching in that order. Your clients can achieve tremendous physical benefits in the strength level of the OPT model, so have fun developing strength, and we'll see you at the next level.
When building stairs, you have to take it one step at a time. Same with bodies, good wellness habits, and more. Today, I'm going to talk about the fact that we've created an entire training model just for you to get your clients to optimal levels. And you guessed it, the model uses a step-by-step process. A lot of personal trainers have specific experience in their specialized field. For example, people who were bodybuilders train bodybuilding. People who've done Pilates teach Pilates. Although experience is always an important quality to have in any field, including personal training, it's not the only qualification. In some cases, it's not even the most important qualification held by a CPT. Designing safe and effective exercise training programs requires a variety of skills, including knowledge of anatomy, physiology, and human movement, the ability to communicate effectively with clients, and experience working with diverse populations. To help you design safe and effective training programs based on your client's individual needs, NASM recommends using a structured, scientifically based program design model. The training program should be a methodical approach to improve physical and performance adaptations. And guess what? NASM has created an evidence-based training system with all that good stuff included. It's known as the Optimum Performance Training Model, or OPT. The OPT model was conceptualized as a training program for a society that has more structural imbalances and susceptibility to injury than ever before. It's a process of programming that systematically progresses any client to any fitness or sport performance goal. The OPT model is based on the scientific rationale of human movement science and uses the principles of integrated training, which we are going to go over right now. The OPT model is divided into 3 different levels of training: stabilization, strength, and power. Each of those are subdivided into 5 phases. It's important that you really understand the scientific rationale behind each level and each individual phase of training. The first level of training in the OPT model focuses on 2 main adaptations: improving movement patterns and enhancing stabilization. That'll prepare the body for the demands of higher levels of training to follow. Just as important as this phase is for beginners, it's also important to cycle back to it periodically after periods of strength and power training to maintain a high degree of core and joint stability. In addition, it allows the body to actively rest from more intense bouts of training. The focus of stabilization training includes several goals: improving movement patterns and exercise technique, muscle imbalances, joint range of motion and flexibility, stabilization of the core musculature and peripheral joints, preventing tissue overload by preparing muscles, tendons, ligaments, and joints for the upcoming more demanding training, and improving overall cardiorespiratory conditioning. The stabilization level of training in the OPT model consists of a single phase, Phase 1, Stabilization Endurance Training. It's designed to teach optimal movement patterns like pushing, pulling, pressing, squatting, hip hinging, and to help clients become familiar with various modes of exercise. Also, this phase of training creates optimal levels of joint and core stabilization and postural control. Although this is the first phase of training in the OPT model, as I mentioned earlier, it'll also be important to cycle back through this phase of training between periods of higher intensity training. The exercises and movements used will enhance muscular endurance, joint range of motion, joint and core stability, and muscular coordination. It will require slow and controlled movements, relatively light loads, and meticulous attention to proper posture and exercise technique. Once movement patterns have been addressed, exercises can be progressed by introducing a greater challenge to the balance and stabilization systems of the body versus simply increasing the load. For example, a push-up can be progressed to a stability ball push-up. Now, this style of progression requires additional activation from the nervous system and the stabilizing muscles to maintain optimal posture while performing the exercise. Phase 1 stabilization endurance training not only addresses existing structural deficiencies, it may also provide a superior way to alter body composition and reduce body fat, because all the exercises can be performed in a circuit fashion, using short rest periods along with a higher number of reps. Next, the emphasis at the strength level is to maintain stabilization endurance while increasing overall muscular strength. This is also the level of training people will grow into if their goals are increasing muscle size or maximal strength. So, there are 3 phases in the strength level. Phase 2 strength endurance training's goal is to enhance stabilization endurance while increasing prime mover strength. These 2 adaptations are accomplished by performing 2 exercises in a superset sequence, back-to-back without rest, with similar joint dynamics. The first exercise should be a traditional strength exercise performed in a stable environment, say a bench press. And then the second exercise is a stabilization-focused exercise performed in a less stable but controlled environment, like a stability ball push-up. The principle behind this is to work the prime movers in the first exercise to elicit prime mover strength, immediately followed with an exercise that challenges stability and postural control. This produces an increase in muscular endurance, joint stability, and ideal posture. Then, Phase 3, muscular development training. This phase is designed for people who have the goal of maximal muscle growth, like bodybuilders. This phase of training can use a variety of resistance training exercises and methods to elicit a maximal response in muscle growth. This form of training can also benefit people who want to lose body fat while maintaining lean muscle mass. It's optional depending on the goals of the client, as some clients might not have goals of high levels of muscular growth like endurance athletes. But this phase is very popular for those who want to lose body fat and reshape their body. Next up, Phase 4, maximal strength training works toward maximal prime mover strength by lifting heavy loads. In this phase, your client will opt for exclusively heavy weights to complete resistance training exercises. This phase of training is common for strength athletes, like folks who compete in powerlifting or strongman competitions, and others who require maximal strength, like shot put competitors and football linemen. Because the goal is to increase maximal strength capabilities, this is an advanced form of exercise that is optional, depending on the goals and fitness level of the client. Okay, so here we are at the power level of training. It should only be entered after a successful completion of the stabilization and strength levels unless the client is already well-conditioned, has adequate joint and core stability, and is familiar with power forms of exercise. This level of training emphasizes the development of speed and power. This is achieved through one phase of training simply named Phase 5 Power Training. The goal of Phase 5 Power Training is to increase maximal strength and rate of force production, which is important for improving velocity of movement and athleticism. The premise behind this phase of training is the execution of traditional strength exercise with a heavy load, superset with a power-focused exercise of similar joint dynamics. The power exercise is performed with explosive movements like jumping or throwing medicine balls. Also known as complex training, training in this manner has been shown to improve sprint and vertical jump performance. And that is an overview of the levels and phases of the OPT model. Let's finish it up by talking about how to use it. Because it's based on the science of integrated training, all 5 phases within the OPT model often use all forms of exercise and are a far cry from traditional workouts that only incorporate generalized stretching, cardiovascular, and resistance exercise. There are subtle details of the OPT model, ways to incorporate various types of exercise equipment and design exercise programs for special populations or clients with chronic conditions. Using the OPT model will provide you with all the tools necessary to become a skilled and well-rounded fitness professional. You just have to take it step by step, one step at a time. You know how the saying goes, when one door closes, another one opens? Well, when it comes to the body and exercising, the same can be said for movements. As you've probably noticed by now, exercises are often classified in the fitness world based on different loading or weight-bearing characteristics. One of these classifications is to describe an exercise as being either open or closed-chained. Classifying an exercise this way can provide insight into muscle recruitment patterns, the degree of weight-bearing, and the number of joints involved. Why don't we start with closed-chain exercises? These involve applying force into an immovable object like the floor or the wall, or even something like a pull-up bar. So, in other words, the hands or feet are typically fixed and don't move. With the hands and feet, or anything we consider a distal segment, fixed and staying in contact with the stationary surface, closed-chain exercises often require the movement of multiple joints with the contraction of multiple muscle groups. It's not a requirement, but a majority of closed-chain activities are weight-bearing, like push-ups. Squats and lunges are also great examples of closed-chain movements. During these, the legs are fixed on a stable surface, and movement occurs at the hip, knee, and ankle. Multiple muscles are activated, including the entire gluteal and quadriceps groups. When you start to really study closed-chain movements, it's easy to see how the body is moving while transferring the force back into the fixed, stable surface, with multiple joints in the kinetic chain dealing with the resistance. Now, on the other hand, and as you've probably guessed, open-chain exercises are sort of the opposite and involve the ability to freely move the hands and feet. For example, a pull-up is a closed-chain exercise for the back musculature, while the lat pull-down is an open-chain exercise for the same muscle group. You can also see open-chain movement in things like biceps curls, bench press, and leg extension exercises. It sounds confusing at first, but just remember, the primary sign that you're looking at an open-chain movement is that the distal segments, your hands and feet, are not fixed and free to move in space. Another determining factor is that, unlike closed-chain exercises which activate multiple muscles, open-chain exercises tend to focus on isolating individual muscles. To put this whole concept into perspective, let's take the push-up exercise. The push-up is a closed chain exercise because the hands are fixed on the floor while the elbows and shoulders move to complete the exercise. If the push-up were to be an open chain exercise, then the floor would have to give way during each repetition. Now that you have the difference between open and closed chain movements figured out, you can go another step further into designing targeted, specific workouts for your clients. Share this information with them as you work together. It's always cool to gain knowledge about why we're working any given way on any given day. They will have a greater appreciation for your training and education, and it's just going to create a stronger bond, dare I say, another link in the chain that strengthens your rapport and customer loyalty.